platform, which we launched in 2014. Our focus is on selling consumer electronics products online. We've also branched out to other categories as well as to run last mile services for other e-commerce platforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Asad, first of all, for organizing this panel. My name is Hilal. I'm the investment manager of Iraq Venture Partners. We're the first venture capital firm to be based in Iraq. Currently, our offices are in Baghdad, and we're looking for startups to invest in. We invest up to $250,000 as a first ticket with the possibility for follow-on investments. Thank you.
Karam, for all of us who don't know anything about angel investing, can you please tell us a little bit about it?
Is this working now? So, angel investing is basically when an individual uses their own private funds to invest in a business. Typically, it's associated with early stage startups. A lot of the time, I think people associate it with tech, but that's not necessarily true. It just it's about being a it's a low investment, high reward, or high risk, high reward investment typically. Compared to VCs, you tend to get slightly more favorable terms, just because the investor is looking at it from a different viewpoint. I think that VCs tend to be very much driven by business plans and financials, whereas the angel investor might be more willing to invest because of the founder or the business belief in the vision. And so it's a great way to get investment early on in your business.
Can you tell us what motivated you to get into angel investing?
So for me, early on in my career, I was earning a decent amount of money and saving most of that money, and I wasn't married at the time, so I could do that. So after a couple of years of working and I started to build up my savings, I started to think about the best way to invest that money. Angel investing is probably not something that you should do with all of your investment. I think most people start to build up a portfolio, a diverse portfolio, but I was very much, I'm a bit of a risk taker, so the first sum of money that I made, I gave it to pretty much the first person that came and pitched me an idea, and fortunately it worked out. The business is still surviving today, it's profitable. And the dividends which I got from that business are what I used to fund a lot of other investments. And today, I have a much more diverse portfolio. And I think for most angel investors, I don't think that their high-risk investments exceed 5 to 10% of their portfolio. So the structure has changed a bit, but I'm still very active in investing.
Are you at liberty to tell us who was the first startup?
So it was actually a company here in Iraq. Which it's a kind of, it's one of the most interesting businesses. It's a fit-out business which does interiors for corporate clients like Zayn, I think, is one of my top clients, and a few of the other corporates. And it's an interesting business model. At the time when we started it was greenfield. The business didn't really exist, so we started from scratch. And yeah, we've done fairly well over the last 10 years. I think competition has increased in the last few years, but it was definitely a successful investment. We'll try and do it after the panel discussion.
Okay, Harry. Can you please explain to us what is microlending and what role does it play in supporting micro and small and medium-sized enterprises?
Well, the microlending, first, we are in a community before when we established back in 2003. The majority of the businesses in the country after the Operation Iraqi Liberation was much similar to the micro. Micro is, according to the indicators of passively, is business which includes 1 to 2 workers, let's say, and with amount not exceeding $10,000 to $25,000, with a very few tech innovation in the business. But we are currently, as growth, and we are more in the small and medium enterprise sector, which is the smallest between $10,000 to $100,000, with employees not exceeding 25, for medium businesses between 100 to 150, sometimes goes to 175. As their Basel 3, which is an indicator. Unfortunately, in Iraq, the Central Bank of Iraq is still working on the codes that have been established by the first Qaddafi regime in 1967. Yet we don't have the definition of any businesses to diversify the indicators for small and medium enterprises. The only definition is in the Central Bank of Iraq says small business is who hires 110 people with 15,000 Iraqi dinar, which is not anymore exist. So as Crofin, we are working according to Basel. We have indicators to include that. Micro-lending nowadays is more popular because of Quran and other guys. But majorly in Iraq, now the Central Bank of Iraq, through the Tamwil program and also USAID MENA initiative too, is focusing more on small and medium enterprises. Because it has a higher impact with the lower risk. Also, they are able to provide collateral based on what they have. I think more often we hear successful business that converted from a micro level to small businesses level. That jumps here we see a lot, and also we see the biggest gap is, as per my master presentation, it's a medium, I call it the missing middle. Unfortunately, in Kurdistan and also Iraq, we have either they are very small businesses or they are very large businesses. The issue of this, it should be driven by the central bank and also the esteemed business unions and the Chamber of Commerce and Industries. Government intervention here is very low. We wish to see more in that regard.
So, just one thing, how are you different than a bank loan? And I feel this is a point that needs to be made clear.
We are a lot different. We are different because we are not only giving you money, we are not only requiring collateral, we are not doing all these. These are the classical way. The new investment strategy for growth, we are not requiring any more real estate to give it to me so I can give you money. This is not very accurate. It's not a best practice as well. This goes back maybe to the 16th, 17th of last century. As growth, we also provide a business support because we say we are beyond finance. Beyond finance is I have to bring you in, work as an incubator, prepare you for the investment, and also help you with the financial reporting, maybe if the business requires business planning, help them in some strategic points, aspects of the business. The issue is the SMEs themselves. Growth are no longer requiring this, but again, just a small example. Last week we received an application. If you look at the financial reporting, you can unlock on that financial reporting. And it was audited by an external accounting company. It doesn't make sense. The guy has 10 employees, and if you look at the separate sheets, salaries and wages are zero. And I called the person, I said, so who gives their salaries? He said, oh, I forgot. We do that because we don't want to pay their pension. So, growth basically, it's more than a bank. In the bank, they require 300% sometimes collateral, and that 300%, we can multiply by 3, because when they are sending you an evaluator for to make evaluation for the real estate, they divide it on 3, so they can be there. And then the fourth market value, the FSV, it's gonna be third of that amount. So if you, for instance, if you go ask for $100,000, you should provide at least a collateral between $800,000 to $900,000. And Growth don't require this. And this all we have people apply, and hopefully very soon they're gonna get the credit.
Thank you, Harry, for that. Mazen, so the concept of corporate investing is relatively new in Iraq. Can you tell me more about it and explain to the audience what is it all about?
Now you know. All right. So corporate investing, well, let me say, we surprised ourselves with TikTok, to be honest. When we went, it was a time when we were actually thinking. So first of all, in the case of Korak or the case of a telecom company, it is not a secret that we are going to die soon as a telecom industry, because we will not be able to compete with the giants such as Facebook or Meta, such as Google, who are actually providing the connectivity that we are surviving on and we're selling, that they're starting to do it for free. So if you see telecoms in all of the developed countries, you see that they're going to becoming content providers, they're diversifying. So for us, really this idea came from there, from that diversification, from moving away from the traditional telecom of selling connectivity, connecting people on calls. We're already not really connecting half of the people we were connecting 10 years ago, thanks to WhatsApp, Viber, all of the other OTT applications. So this idea of us really going in and investing came from there. And for me, one of the things that differentiates corporate investing from angel investing or any other sort of investing is the fact that we are an established company, an established entity with an established market. So whenever we invest in any company, we already open the door for the customers that we already have. That's one of the biggest differentiators here. Second is really the strict rules of the corporation, that they have to report to that corporation. And it has to be in the style of that corporation, as each corporate entity has their own style, has their own culture. So, excuse me. So that is like kind of giving the culture of the corporation to the startup as well, which is, I think, it can be good in some cases, especially for investment, like getting them in line for further investment. But at the same time, it might make them lazy with routines and bureaucracy. So you have to find the balance. I hope I've answered the question.
Zaki, can you tell us a little bit about Iraq Venture Partners? Some of the things we'd also like to know is the average ticket size, if you have a specific industry focus, and what do you look for in a startup?
Yeah, sure. So Iraq Venture Partners was formed a year ago to bridge a gap, the missing middle, to steal a phrase from your book, from your thesis. We have a missing middle between the programs that are funded by donors, such as the acceleration programs of 51 Labs and the support of 51 Invest, and the big investments that the traditional investors in Iraq are willing to make. These investments are typically more than $10 million or so. So we need to bridge this gap to provide the tickets or the investments for the startups that graduate from these programs, or the startups that approach us at the earliest stages, provide them with investments that starts from $50,000 to $250,000 on the first ticket, and to allocate follow-on investments for them in case they were able to provide proper growth or to demonstrate a good traction with the initial investment that they received from Iraq Venture Partners. Now, when it comes to industries, we're not really focusing on a typical industry per se. What we focus on is the ability of the entrepreneur to expand and to grow the market footprint, meaning that you don't really think of the city that you are in, so you're not only serving Erbil or only serving Syria. At some point you need to serve all of Iraq, and maybe actually you need to think from now how you're going to enter other markets after expanding all over Iraq. This is first. Second, you need to figure out how you will be able to compete with the startups that might enter the Iraqi market from the GCC or from Turkey or from other neighboring markets. This is the thesis that you will present to the venture capital firm that will highlight why another entity will buy your firm. The most famous case was actually Careem. Careem expanded in MENA region, and Uber tried to enter the MENA region, and they fought Careem really hard in several MENA markets, but at the end of the day they decided to buy Careem for, I believe it was $3 billion, and Careem was the first unicorn from this region. So we're really looking for the first Iraqi unicorn. We're looking for the first big Iraqi success story, even if now in September 2022 this might not be very believable or very apparent for the Iraqi entrepreneurs. We're looking for the entrepreneurs that will go the long way and who could be coachable, who will accept guidance, and who will be willing to iterate and to circumvent the issues that, or the challenges that they face on their journey.
So just circling back to the example you gave about Careem, you spoke about the exit and how Careem was the first exited company. No, Amazon was one of the first unicorns. So sometimes there's a bit, I feel that we might have a bit of confusion about what is an exit and what does it mean to have to sell our shares or sell our company. Maybe you can explain that concept a little more in terms as an investor. Why are you looking for this and how does it happen?
Yeah, sure. So for a venture capital firm to invest in your company, this venture capital firm would have been required to sell their investments at some point in the future for obviously a high return given the risk that they are taking with your startup. Because the venture capital firm operates through funds. They create a fund from other investors, and this is a key differentiation with the angel investors. So the venture capital firms invest other people's money rather than their own money. And they are required to return those funds to the investors within a certain period of time. This ranges from 5 to 6 years at the shortest, and it could extend to 10-15 years. And now there's a new concept in our industry called the evergreen fund, where it can extend into perpetuity actually. So in general, the venture capital firms are required to sell their share in the business, and they prefer to sell their shares for a significant increase in the value of the shares, because this is a very risky investment, and on average, from each 5 investments that you will make, 4 investments will return 0. They will go to 0 and will not make money on them. So we need the 5th one to return all the money that you have invested in all the 5 startups, plus the profits that you are seeking. Hence the focus on the exponential growth of the company and on the availability of a certain buyer that will buy this company down the road, maybe in 5 to 10 years. And this is an integral part of the investment thesis that is presented to our investment committee, how we could sell this business later on, or how we can sell at least our share in this business later on.
Thank you, Zed. Karam, how has angel investing evolved in the past 5 years? And do you feel that people are more open to this type of investing in Iraq? And do you think they understand this concept?
So I think in some ways, Iraq has always been about angel investors. Because if you look back historically, there's a lack of access to capital markets, there's a lack of facilities, and so people, if they did want to set up a business, would either use their own personal funds or they would go to friends and family. Friends and family are essentially the essence of angel investing. That's normally how it starts, right? It's through your network. And if you look at it from that perspective, it's always been the case in Iraq. I think where things have started to change and where we see more of a convergence to the kind of angel investor that you see in the US and Europe is that the way that people value businesses, and Zali mentioned about growth, I think today the mindset for a lot of angel investors is not about making profits or getting dividends, it's about growing the value of their investment. And today, especially in tech, the way that works is by growing the top line, showing that you can have a feasible business which will at some point in the future make money. And through that you will see appreciation in the value of the share. I think that mindset is only now in the past 5 years starting to come to Iraq, and that comes through more mature angel investors like the people who I think have invested with you on VC, who have experience investing in businesses outside of Iraq, bringing those ideas and those thoughts back to the Iraqi market and saying, well, the business doesn't necessarily need to make money today, we just need to show that we can grow the business and make money in the future. And as those people come back and bring those ideas with them, I think you're starting to see more acceptance from high net worth individuals who are based in Iraq, who have maybe had less exposure to those kind of investments, start to also copy and emulate those trends. And so I think there is a lot more acceptance now. I think it's almost becoming trendy for people who have the financial capability to invest in startups now because they see other people doing it and maybe succeeding at doing it. And so I think that's where the main shift has been, and I think that we'll continue to see that over the next few years. What I do think, what I would like to see is I think that the traditional mentality in Iraq is to go with a greenfield approach, which is to say that I see a business idea, and I see that it can be successful, but you know what, I can just do it myself. I have the money, I can hire people, I can go and do it, and there's no need for me to pay a premium to go and buy shares from an entrepreneur so that they can run the business for them. I think that undervalues the role of the founder and the role of the entrepreneur, and I would like to see that changing in the future, where people come and say, I have money, I'd like to get into this business, but there's somebody who would be a great person or a great team to lead that business going forward. And I think that will change over time. It needs a little bit more maturity in the market. I think it needs also better quality of investment opportunities as well, because I think in a lot of cases, the businesses are so small that it is just easier to compete with them, and to, unlike the Korean case where they're already very well established, it's just easier to spend a little bit of money and do it yourself. So as we get better quality entrepreneurs, better quality opportunities, I think we'll see the change.
Do you feel that angel investors, since they know that startups have less access to capital in Iraq, might take advantage of this by overtaking equity from a startup?
Absolutely. I think that most investors who have reached the position that they've reached are probably to some degree opportunistic. I think that the concept of angel investing is probably a little bit more altruistic than the concept, for example, of investing through a fund, through a VC, and that there may be cases where people have other motivations, other financial returns to invest or to accept a lower valuation, maybe to contribute to the community because they had a good connection with the entrepreneur. But certainly, I think like anywhere else in the world, you will expect people to take advantage of that.
Specifically on the concept of equity and overtaking that. We're an early stage venture capital fund, so we have almost the same perspective or the same interest as the angel investors. It's really important for us as a fund not to take or to overtake equity, because we need to leave enough room on this cap table for the later stage funds to come in and invest. Because at the end of the day, if the later stage funds, and mainly those are foreign funds, if they don't come to invest in these startups, our own investment, the value of our own investment will go to zero, because the startup will go bankrupt, or in the best cases, it will become what we call a zombie. So it will become profitable, it will become a cash flow positive entity, but it will be an SME, it will not grow, and hence we will not be able to get back the initial investment that we have. So it's not helping neither for you as founders nor for the early stage investors to overtake equity from your business, because they're doing you harm and they're doing themselves harm directly. And most of the investors, they haven't been through the whole cycle of growing a business with their investments and then trying to exit the business to understand the issue of overtaking equity early on and messing up the cap table of these startups.
Thank you for that. I just have one more question. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel that sometimes the angel investors here think more about revenue sharing than about taking equity from a startup. Is that true? What have you seen?
Sorry, could you clarify a little bit more what you mean by revenue sharing? You mean like...
So they come in, they put their money, they don't take equity, but they'll take a monthly or annual or...
a royalty, is that what...
Yeah.
By the way, I feel I should probably clarify that I have absolutely nothing against venture capital. In fact, I'm a local venture partner for an international VC firm, so they absolutely have their place. I personally haven't seen that happen so much where they do go based on a royalty scheme. I think that's quite common where you own IP for a product, where you're selling physical products, and the person who owns the patent for that product recoups or earns based on the investor will earn based on the sales of the product and some percentage of the sales, and I think that actually can work for both parties because for the investor it means that as the business grows and as sales are achieved, they can recover their initial investment more quickly, and sometimes gives an easier way to structure a deal for entrepreneurs who are looking to try and raise funds.
Thank you for that. Harry, you already told me about the barriers that you're facing in microlending. Can you tell me a little bit about the opportunities there is?
The first time I meet any applicants, I would say, do you know what's the hope? The hope is you. You are the hope. We are only the tools. The opportunity here, we can talk about a lot of barriers, but I'm always a positive person. I look at the positive side of the business. The opportunity that we provide, first thing, we are very competitive on the interest rate prices with the all available funds in Iran, including the Central Bank of Iran. We are the only fund in the country that we helped 24 businesses during the crisis of COVID, and we are now continuing the second batch of that COVID funding. We call it the relief fund. Nobody would help, was not ready to help the businesses during the COVID crisis. We were very lucky to save 667 jobs, also to make 24 businesses survive here in Erbil and also in Nineveh. On the other side, the new investment strategy for growth that will not require real estate as collateral. And this is, I think, that's the main thing, because with the absence of a guarantee scheme in the country, with all these very beautiful schemed SMEs, they didn't find any collateral to provide so they can obtain the loan. What is the other way of the business? The only way of that business is go diving and die. Growth now opened that door. There's no any more barriers, but I come back here, the businesses need to be more educated on the management side, especially on the financial reporting, separate sheets, business planning, the the let's say, the analysis or projections over the next 3 years. This is what HE is. Other side of that, we are always ready to give that help. We always bring the applicants in. We make cold calls every day with a lot of them just to double check if the business goes well. The other opportunity that we provide, we are not like the banks. If somebody gets delay on payments, we're going to ask, we're going to analyze, we look at the market. We're not going to just rise the sword and do the next action. Fortunately, growth until today, we don't have any cases in the court. We build trust. That trust is an important tool. We build hope, and that hope is going to grow, make the business to grow. Besides that, we are having a very, environment-friendly for the SMEs to come and get any help. Sometimes we connect. We have a network, we send emails, we connect business to business. Maybe this business has a raw material, the other business is a processor, and the next business is end user production. So we connect all three together through the portfolio that we have. Remaining to say that we also provide the tech side of it. We bring other organizations around the world to interfere and help the businesses to get in through the collaboration and bridges and synergize bridges that we do between an organization to organization. Luckily, USAID has put a lot of efforts in this side, and also the United States government, to help these implementers of the USA to get connected together so each one can provide some of the business, some of the services. Luckily now we see, GIC, JICA, COICA, CEDA, other people are coming in. And this collaboration, it's well connected to COFIN. Besides that, we are very soft on the duration of the loan, but realistically, we look at the file, we analyze the capacity of the cash flow on the repayment side. More than that, we always an open edge for the SMEs here.
Okay, thank you so much. Mazen, I'd like to know more about what drives your investment thesis. And also, if you could tell us, is there any industry focus? What is your ticket size? And what do you look for in a startup?
So for us, I think I answered the first part earlier, that we need to diversify. And I think that's not just for telecoms, for any industry, especially in today's world where things are changing so rapidly. It's unbelievable what is happening. There's companies, you meet them, they say we're interior designers, and you ask them, so what do you do? They're like, no, we're interior designers in the metaverse. So you imagine telling someone that 10 years ago, they would just laugh and tell you, are you crazy? But today that's a reality, and in this changing environment, we can't stick to the old traditional methods of business, of having a product, selling it, And I think one of the companies that has done a great job at keeping up is Apple. They basically give you the same phone under a different name every year. But they keep so it's either you innovate or you make people think you innovate. Either works. So for us, to be honest, one of the things actually I want to go back to the point Karen made is that when the reason that we invested in TikTok is because we had already started planning for product delivery. And there were a lot of voices inside internally that were saying we need to do this, and I was one of the loudest voices that said no. Because once you put, as I said, you have the weight of a corporate company that's a national telecom operator. So I cannot, as a national telecom operator, go with an application that only serves the Arbil market or the Suleymaniya market. By the end of the year, I should be all across the country, just like my network, and that is a huge investment. Besides the investment, it's an operational nightmare. So with that, we said, okay, but the idea is we're diversifying, but we're not diversifying at the risk of destroying the brand image, because that brand image is worth more than any startup that we would probably invest in or exit from. So that's where the idea of TikTok came from. Is yes, no, we're going to put the weight of Kodak, but it's not Kodak, so we can go slow and as nice as possible and evaluate the market as it's needed. Now for us, being a telco operator, being in the enablers of technology, being the enablers of the connectivity that drives technology, we are focusing more on tech-based startups. The reason is because the resources that we have, that we can deploy, that we can share the expertise with the startups are mostly on the tech side. And also the fact that we understand the tech side more than the non-tech startups. But I've always said this, that we are open if there is a startup that is scalable, that we see it has potential, that it can grow even if it doesn't directly support what Kodak is doing, then we will be happy to check it out and to study the case and what is going on. But for us, for me personally, what I look, and I think again, going back to the point that Carol made, is the people. Because yes, we as Kodak, we can do it. If we get an idea, then of course we have almost 2,000 employees, so I'm pretty sure I can make a task force of 10 people within the company and we can do anything we want, but at the end of the day that's not really our job and that's not really our focus. So it is really important to invest in the person, in the entrepreneur, in the founder, him or herself, because I always say, if you want a business plan, then there is no founder, there's no entrepreneur that can make a solid business plan like a university professor who's teaching business courses. So it's not really the business plan. Now the idea has its weight as well, but now I'm not saying the business plan doesn't matter, of course it matters, but it's not the whole story. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. It's the person really, because especially in a country like Iraq, where it's a constantly changing environment, the business environment, the legal aspects change, the government changes. So you never know, you always wake up and you're seeing that it's a different day. It's a different thing going on, different issue that you have to deal with. So it's really important to see that flexibility and that drive in the founder, in the entrepreneur, that okay, no matter what, even if things become very difficult, they won't give up. And to see how flexible they are, that they are actually going to adapt to the situation and answer the challenges as promptly as possible that come to them. And I think that's a wider strategy that we agree on as a corporation, that that's how we should be going, but we are also now, one of the other things that we really want to see is content. Startups that are focused on creating content for consumption, whether it's streaming, whether it's gaming, whether it's any content, because I think that's where the next steps are.
Thank you for that. So in the next 2-3 years, do you feel that corporate investing is going to become more trendy in Iraq? Who do you think the next industry players are going to be? Do you have any predictions? So telco, we've already said telco is interested in that, but what other giants might be interested?
So I think, well, let me brag a bit. We're very proud that we opened the door. We sent shockwaves actually across the startup environment of Iraq, because it was the first time that in the seed round an application and a startup would raise $5 million from a corporation. Going back to the point of Zahi, that one of the strategies we have is not to take too much equity. Because if you really do that, then you create a problem for yourself and for the founder later on. So with that being said, I'm not really sure, but what I'm really seeing that now, since we opened the door again, I hope that more corporations will come in, because one of the things that is an issue here is trust. that that trust factor is not there. Because a lot of companies come, and especially if you say I'm based in Iraq, and we don't have a credit scoring, we don't really have a proper banking system, unfortunately. It's really hard for international investors to come in. It's really hard for even local investors to put that much weight into one company or a startup. So it is really important for companies like Korak Telecom when they come in, or any other giant company that has been there for the past 20 years, to say, I'm behind this company. That in itself is assurance for any investor to come in. It's like, okay, this company, risk of this company going bankrupt, this risk of this company is much lower than without a giant behind it. But what I'm seeing, I think there will be more corporate companies coming into it, but I think that the real estate companies will probably be next. We are already seeing that they are not really investing in startups, but they are investing in their kind of own daughter companies, mostly tech-based. But I think sooner or later they will realize what we realized in Korak, that they cannot do everything on their own. And they will need people, and some of these brilliant people will not accept to come work for a salary on a time-based system where you tell them you show up at 8 and leave at 4. These people have bigger aspirations and dreams, and they will actually give you the idea and the expertise, but you will need to invest. So I think real estate will be next. And I hope that we start a competition between ourselves and our competitors in telecom, because I think that will really develop the industry. Now, I hope the CFO doesn't hear me, but...
This sounds so exciting. Okay. Hello. So, we've been talking about individual angel investors, and we do have one angel network in Iraq. But do you feel we're going to see more angel groups or angel networks or angel funds? And why don't you think we have any by now?
Yeah, it's interesting. The culture, I think, of Iran and the Middle East in general is built around networks much more so than the US or Europe. And so I find personally that in terms of degrees of separation between myself and any other angel investor, typically you either know them or you know someone who knows them in Iraq. And so a lot of the time those networks already exist informally through the community. I think that as the community expands, I think angel networks will become more and more important, because what you really want when you go to one of these events or when you participate is to meet people who you don't already know. And I think a lot of the time it's just the same people that we see all the time. On the other hand, the role of the angel network is not just from the investor side, it's also from the business and entrepreneur side. And I think there we as investors don't have easy access to founders and entrepreneurs today, so angel networks can be a very useful resource for deal flow, for getting opportunities through. I know that I struggle with that a lot, and so access to opportunities is important. And as the investment scene expands, I'm sure that we will get more successful angel networks and more angel networks coming in to facilitate that.
Thank you. Zahi, so how has the investment scene developed over the years? And what factors would we need to make this development faster?
Actually, this has been the topics of lots of discussions that we've been having with entrepreneurship support organizations, with donors, and with investors, local and international. The key word is pipeline. So we need more Iraqi youth, more Iraqi, let's say, traditional businessmen to make the jump and start their own startups. Not only the fresh graduate Iraqi from the university, but also the person who have maybe 10 years of experience in the private sector, or they lived abroad and they see an opportunity in their industry in Iraq. We need them to move back to Iraq and to start their business in Iraq to benefit from the support that has been created through the establishment and the evolution of a lot of organizations for the past 5 years or so. Largely, the scene in Iraq has been developed by international donors. These international donors supported several organizations who have built programs across all the geographies of Iraq, across all the regions, and somewhat across the stages, from the outreach and idea stage, awareness and competitions, to the co-working space and incubators, to the acceleration programs, and eventually investment readiness programs. However, the output of all of these exercises or all of these operations have been a bit limited in terms of the numbers of startups that have been created. At the end of the day, this is a numbers game and the ratios are very low. So the percentages of startups that we meet that would move directly to due diligence is low. And on top of that, for the startups who get due diligence, the percentage we present to the investment committee is also low. So to reach a stage where we have a very good portfolio, let's say 20 companies or so, we're looking at 500, 700 startups that will start their journey either through a bootcamp, through ideathons, through startup weekend, or all of these activities. So more activity upstream. And what we've been doing as Iraq Venture Partners, we've been focusing heavily on initiating conversations and having some brainstorming sessions with international players to figure out what are the key barriers that we can unlock for them to look at Iraq market from other end of the value chain.
Thank you. So this is our time, but I would like to know if you have any other closing comments or remarks you'd like to make.
I believe I'll start. I just want to thank you again and the team of 51 Labs and 51 Invest for organizing this panel. I want to just state a comment or a closing remark on believing in the Iraqi market. Believing that, yes, despite all the difficulties, there's still a huge population, there's still money in the hands of these people who are looking for lots of services and lots of products that are offered to their fellow Arabs or the fellow MENA populations, while it's not available yet in Iraq. And at the other side of each difficulty, there is an opportunity for an entrepreneur to provide a solution for a problem that might exist in Iraq and might not be as severe elsewhere, but it's a key challenge in the Iraqi market. So we're looking to meet entrepreneurs from all backgrounds, from all ethnicity or gender or religion, to work with them on building their startup, even if they are not ready yet to present to our investment committee. And thank you.
Also, I'd like to say thank you for organizing the event and giving us the opportunity to sit here and discuss and meet fellow investors, and also to meet entrepreneurs. Since I think a lot of you are entrepreneurs, I would probably want to pass on the one piece of advice which I think would have been very useful for me when I was younger, and that's to say that a lot of people, I think, get into setting up businesses because they think it will take them down the path of success. And I think that you need to be passionate about what you're doing to succeed. I think as an angel investor, that's probably one of the most important things. If you don't have the right business plan, if you don't have the right financials, then your passion is the only thing that's really going to kind of shine through and convince somebody to invest in you. So as long as you are passionate and interested in what you're doing, I think you will succeed and you will attract investment.
Thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you all for listening, and thanks to the fellow panelists with us. For me, in closing remarks, I really want to tell everyone here and everybody watching, the entrepreneurs, don't ever be afraid of failing. Because when you fail, you will really understand what went wrong, and that's your opportunity to fix it. And that's what we would like to see. So if you ever fail, don't give up. come back to us. We will be more than happy if you show us that you've learned from the mistakes and you have come up with a new one, as I said earlier as well, that we need the flexibility. We need to see that you are able to adapt to the changing environment and the changing situations. You know, as Zahi mentioned, I believe in this environment as well in Iraq, and I think we have a huge potential. And I understand that it's quite hard, you know, in terms of regulations, in terms of laws, and the lack of a proper business court. But trust me, it's the startups that will lead this. If the startups are there and you don't give up, governmental institutions, non-governmental institutions will also be forced to actually provide the necessary environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Azza, for hosting us here. Very generous $500 and $500. Really appreciate it for all of our investors here. And one word, hope. Don't lose the hope.
Thank you all so much. We'd like to thank our sponsors again at AM and GIZ. We have some snacks, so feel free to mingle, network, get to meet each other. And thank you again. It was an amazing conversation. Our first face-to-face event. Thank you.